All right, chemistry kids. Today we are going to introduce you to the periodic table. And the very first thing I want to do is go over some of the names that we get some of the symbols from that aren't they don't really follow English, because the names that we're using to derive the symbols for these elements actually come from mostly Latin. There's one exception there, which comes from German. So here we go. When we left off, I told you that there were over 110. Right now, as it currently stands, there's 118. 92 are natural. So anything past element 92, which happens to be uranium, is made in the lab. It's a synthetic element. There are several of these that we are going to use throughout the year. So we're going to commonly use them, and it's going to be so much easier for you if you learn the symbols and the names, so that when I write the symbol, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay? So you will need to memorize these elements by their properly spelled name and symbol. So if I give you the symbol, you need to give me the name, and you need to be able to spell it properly. If I give you the name, you need to be able to give me the symbol. Okay? So remember also, if there are two letters in an element symbol, the first letter is always capitalized. So we always start with a capital letter, and then the second letter is always lowercase. If there's only one letter in the symbol, it is always capitalized. So make sure that I can tell the difference between capitalized and non-capitalized in the way you write it. Okay, so here we go. A list to be memorized. Aluminum. The symbol for aluminum is Al. So this actually comes from the English. So it's not too bad. Barium, this also comes from the English. The symbol here is Ba. Br is bromine. Ca is calcium. Carbon is just a plain capital C. So far, these are all pretty easy. H is hydrogen. I is iodine. Iron. Do you see that little asterisk here? That asterisk tells me that this is not an English-based name. This is a Latin-based name. Iron comes from the Latin, which is ferrous. So we use the symbol Fe. Ferrous in Latin means iron. So why do you think a Ferris wheel is called a Ferris wheel? Maybe because they're made out of steel, which is mostly iron. Lead, also Latin. Lead, the symbol for that is Pb. For plumbum, plumbum is the Latin word for lead. And so think about it, way back in Roman times, when they had plumbing, it was made with lead. That's why lead is called plumbum, and that's why plumbing is still called plumbing, because it's after plumbum. Lithium is Li. Oxygen is a capital O. Phosphorus is a capital P. K, that also is Latin. It's kalium, but we call it, in English, we call it potassium. Si is silicon. Silver, once again, more Latin. Ag, argentum. So argentum is the Latin for silver. So what do you think they were trying to find when they settled Argentina? Maybe some silver? They didn't really find it in Argentina. They found it next door in Chile. Anyway, here we go, some more. Chlorine, the symbol for chlorine is Cl. Cu is Latin for cuprum, which we call copper in English. F is fluorine. Now, this is kind of a hard one to remember how to spell. We usually want to put the O before the U and call it like fluorine, like flowering, but it's fluorine. The U comes before the O. Gold. This is also Latin. Gold in Latin is aurum, so we call it a U. So those of you who like to do the Disney princess thing, remember Sleeping Beauty, what her name was? Her name was Aurora, and they called her Aurora because her hair was golden like the dawn, like the sky when the sun's first coming up. Aurora, aurum, same root word, gold. Okay, helium, He. Mg is magnesium. Mercury, also some more Latin. Mercury's symbol is Hg. For hydra, hydra is the H. Hydra in Latin means water, and the G comes from argentum, silver. So water, silver. If you've ever seen mercury, it looks like liquid silver. That's why it's called hydra argentum or Hg. Ne is neon. Ni is nickel. I don't think I spelled that right. Nitrogen is N. Nickel, it's an E, right? And then sulfur, notice it has a UR, is a capital S. Sn, this is also Latin. So Sn is stannum, and we call it tin in English. So tin or stannum, Sn. Ti, titanium. Uranium is a capital U, and zinc, Zn. Okay, so that will give us the elements that I want you to know. I've also included Quizlets for you to use that has a few more elements. Use Quizlets 1, 2, and 3 as flashcards or games or whatever to help you know those, because we are going to start having quizzes on the elements next week. So get ready for those. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is the periodic table here. So this part isn't in your notes. So I'm going to just go through this, and if you find a space in your notes, you can put this on the front page where that periodic table is, I think. But here we go. Here's the periodic table. We like to break up the periodic table in groups. Sometimes we call them families. So groups are actually groups are actually the columns. So they are the vertical columns. And we call them families because the elements in those columns have very much the same type of reactivities, the same type of properties. I don't know about you, but when I compare myself to the people in my family, I look similar. I have very similar personality. And that's why back in the day, we used to call them families, because these elements are all very similar to each other. Periods, on the other hand, are the horizontal rows. So periods are the horizontal rows. And they basically are talking about energy levels. Okay? So let's number the groups and the periods really quick. So I'm going to go back here. So we're going to number the groups first. Remember, the groups are the vertical columns. So I have group 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And I'm just going to keep numbering. So notice when we're all done, we end up with 18 groups or families. So there are 18 of these, okay? Let's number the periods then. I'm going to change my color. So in the periods, we are going to do the horizontal rows because that's what a period is. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And some of you guys are going to be like, wait a second, what about these guys down here at the bottom? If you notice, lanthanum all the way fits right in here, and actinium to lawrencium fits in right here. So they are actually part of groups 6, or not groups, but periods 6 and 7 respectively. So don't worry about these guys at the bottom because they're actually part of these groups up here in 6 and 7. Okay, so when we look at periods, we have 7 periods. Okay, now metals. I'm going to show you a trick. There's a little line that we can put in the periodic table to separate the metals from the nonmetals. I'm going to grab a highlighter and I'm going to draw in that line. We start between boron and aluminum, and we just draw stair steps all the way down through the periodic table. Okay? That line separates the metals from the nonmetals. So let's change my pen again. So over here, left of this line are the metals. And then over here on the right of this line are the nonmetals. And I can't spell today. Do you ever have days where you just can't spell? Let's try that again. Nonmetals. Okay, so the nonmetals are to the right of that stair step line and the metals are to the left. There is an exception though. Here's our one exception. Hydrogen is really a nonmetal. Okay, so hydrogen is our one exception to that staircase rule. Okay, so the metals are to the left and the center of the periodic table. Notice we have so many metals, like all of this is metals except for hydrogen, okay? The nonmetals, on the other hand, are to the right of the periodic table. So they are the right side of the periodic table. And notice that's not a whole lot. There's not a lot of them. Okay? So we get into metalloids. Metalloids are kind of in between. They have properties of both metals and nonmetals. Okay, so they're kind of in between. I call them the tweeners. So they're not really they're like tweener people. They're not really grown up, but they're not little kids anymore. But so these guys have properties of both metals and nonmetals. I'm going to highlight the metalloids with a different color really quick. So let's go here. Let's grab another highlighter. Let's grab another color. I'm going to highlight those guys in kind of this magenta. So the metalloids: boron, silicon, germanium, arsenic, antimony, tellurium. Those are the metalloids. Notice they go right down that staircase. They're right along that line between the metals and the metal and the nonmetals. So it would make sense that they're kind of in between those two. Okay, so let's go and fill out more of our notes. We already did this. How many groups? So remember, the groups are the columns. we had 18 groups. How many periods are there? Remember, these are the rows. We had 7 rows. We already drew that thick line that separate the metals from the nonmetal. Is hydrogen a metal or a nonmetal? Remember, I told you that hydrogen was the one exception. So hydrogen really should be over here with the nonmetals. So hydrogen is a nonmetal. Okay, so let's look at this. Group and period, and I want to know what element it is and whether it's a metal, nonmetal, or metalloid. So let's go back up. We're going to be looking for group 3 and period 4. So let's go back up to the periodic table. Group 3, so 1, 2, 3, and period 4. Period 4, we have scandium. Okay, so we are looking for scandium right here. And if you notice, scandium was in the metal part of the periodic table. So I would label that a metal. So why don't you try these next 2 on your own and see if you can figure them out. Pause the video for a second. Okay, you ready to try these? So let's look. So we're looking for xenon. That is our clue here. So here we go up to the periodic table. Xenon is right here. So if I look at xenon, I am in group 18 and I am in period 5. So group 18 and period 5. And if I look at xenon, once again, it's very much in the nonmetal area of the periodic table, right? All this area is all nonmetal. So xenon is a nonmetal. It's actually a special type of a nonmetal called a noble gas. We'll get into that in a month or so. All right, group 11 and period 6. So let's go and look this up. Group 11 and period 6, we are looking at gold. Okay, and gold is definitely a metal. So we have the element gold, and it is a metal. Okay, so your homework assignment is going to be very much like this. We're going to be putting you through a scavenger hunt on the periodic table. Okay? All right, regarding compounds, there are millions and millions of chemical compounds. Compounds are composed of one or more elements that are chemically bound together. Okay, that means that they cannot be separated from each other by ordinary physical processes. We actually have to use a chemical process to separate them. We will learn how to name several types of compounds later on this year. So about December time, we will start learning compounds, okay? For now, it's important that you can distinguish them from elements and mixtures, okay? So we've been doing that for the last week or so. Hopefully you're really comfortable on that. So we're gonna have a quiz sometime next week where we're going to talk about all the ways that we can classify matter, chemical properties versus physical properties, and chemical changes versus physical changes, and also some of these elements on the periodic table. Okay? All right. Have a great day. We'll talk to you later. Bye.